Today, what we're going to do is a quick review mentally for you of what we did the first day of hypnosis training. And then we're going to work today on utilization, how to turn a trance. And there's a few other bits and pieces I'll be working with you on. But most importantly today would be hypnotic suggestions. How do you formulate hypnotic pattern and hypnotic suggestions? And I have a handout that I'm really excited by it. It took quite a while to write because every time I'd write about 2 of them, I'd sit in a trance for about 15 minutes, and then I'd go, oh, okay, and I'd try to come back out and write a few more. So this is going to really help you, I think, to develop pattern. So let's just start with a review. I think that'll be the easiest way to go. And I think since this is a hypnosis course, we should start with a hypnosis review. Doing hypnosis. So why don't you take a deep breath and close your eyes. And you remember that you have a signal that you can use that enables you to go into a trance quickly. And I believe that for most of you, you probably chose the signal deep trance. Whenever you stop, go inside, and say this signal to yourself, you'll find that you can alter your consciousness quickly. So let that process begin naturally as you just relax comfortably and go all the way into that particular level that will enable you to really gain some learning here today. As you go into a trance, what I'd like you to do is to begin to focus on a particular outcome that you'd like to be able to use this information to accomplish. In what way will you be able to use hypnosis powerfully as a result of this course and any other previous or future learnings you may get? And the way I'd like you to do that is let me just suggest some ideas to you. Take any one of those or a combination of mine and yours or just yours and zero in at the unconscious level, allowing your unconscious to choose the best outcome and to apply itself diligently to be able to utilize it. So, for example, you might want to use hypnosis to help yourself make changes. You'll recall hypnosis is a state in which beliefs are suspended momentarily. You might want to use hypnosis to help other people make changes clinically. Now, even though it may be a clinical application, you may or may not choose to identify it as such. That choice is yours. You may choose simply to use hypnosis skills in your business life, becoming far more successful and skilled at the use of influence and persuasion as a result of understanding and being able to utilize these patterns effectively. You might also want to use hypnosis skills in interpersonal relationships. Maybe you can use these skills to negotiate or assist yourself and others in some easy and natural and successful kind of way. Maybe there's other things you could do with hypnosis. Maybe something to do with sports or learning. And as you pick the area that you really want to apply this skill to, I want you to begin to have a sensation of all of the resources inside you beginning to come together now, allowing your unconscious to choose and pick and select, working hand in hand with your conscious mind, to bring in all of the appropriate resources that will enable you to easily cause someone to go into a trance. And then to be able to utilize that trance opportunity with them to make powerful internal changes that will reflect on their outside world as well. And as these resources become available to you, you may or may not be conscious of them. You may simply be awed in the amazement kind of way. Each time you find yourself using one and didn't even realize that it's there. Now, as you model the skills that I'll be teaching, allow your unconscious to begin to record this information that I'm doing for you today. Imagine that you have a VCR in your head. Imagine that you hit the record and play button. Notice it beginning to turn. Notice the audio coming online and the picture coming online. And just understand that you're making a permanent representation of this training in your mind. And as you do that, allow that representation to be accurate of the skills and techniques I'll be teaching you, so that you can draw upon that resource anytime you choose to. And of course, your unconscious can be drawing on it anytime it wants to. Great. Now, I'd like you to think about something that you absolutely believe is true. Maybe the sun's going to come up tomorrow. Maybe you own your car, or your owner rents your home. Something without content, so to speak, but just something that you absolutely believe is true. And when you find that, I'd like you just to nod. Great. Come up with something that a lot of times is naturally true. Excellent. As you look at this example of what you believe to be true in your mind, point to the location where the picture resides. Excellent. Good. Determine how far away it is and how big it is, how bright it is. Now I'd like you to just pop up above it all to a place that isn't. And in this place, all beliefs and values are suspended. Make it your own, because you're just going to need it for a second right now. And as you pop up into that place, what I'd like you to do is to make a picture of yourself having the ability, drive, and desire to master and utilize these patterns. The ability, the drive, and the desire to master and use these patterns. Please refrain from making a picture of you having already mastered them. You will be sorely disappointed when you go out to use them if you do that. So you're seeing yourself in an ongoing mastering type process in which, as you master it, you begin to be able to use them naturally and easily in your life. You become aware of opportunities to just let fly with these patterns. You feel that mastery building and growing. Look at that picture now that represents all this. Way up there, outside of beliefs and values. And now at the count of 3, when I snap my fingers, I'd like you to just have that picture pop into the location of where you just pointed a moment ago, of where that thing is that is something you believe is true. It's just going to pop right in there, sealed and completely, permanently there. 1, 2, 3. Lock it in. And as that's there, we'll let that become a location in your mind to assimilate resources for hypnosis. Now, if you have another location for those kinds of things too, you can continue to use it. But if not, your unconscious might as well go ahead and just use this. It's simple and it's all right there. All right. Now take a moment to go much deeper. And I'd like you to experiment by letting your facial muscles just relax a little bit more. Maybe the head begins to tilt forward ever so slightly, or just maintain a neutral balance between forward and backward. Yeah. Imagine that you're looking at a scale, like a thermometer, if you will. And let's just say that 100 is very deep trance and 0 is complete and full consciousness with very little, if any, unconscious activity that you're aware of. And let's say that right now you're at 25. Unless you know the number already for you, but if you don't, let's assume it's 25. And what I want you to do is get on top of this scale, if it's mercury or what have you, and shove it down to 50. Push the mercury or the scale down to 50. And then jump off the scale and watch it as it cruises right on down by itself to 25. And this is much. That's right. And so now, with this realization, let's gather up some motivation so we can really learn today. We can make personal application for these skills so that as you use them regularly, automatically, you find the success in your life grows greater and greater. And you accomplish the things you want with ease, as if it were magic. As if somebody entranced you and gave you all the skills necessary to create the kind of future you want. Now, look at it and see yourself there. And allow that to direct your behavior into the future so that you accomplish what it is that you really want to accomplish. And having done that, and continued a pattern that you can follow for the rest of your life, it may be appropriate to change your thoughts a little right now. Sometimes you're laying in bed and you know it's getting near morning. And you're thinking, wow, I had a great night's sleep. And you know that probably any minute the alarm clock's going to ring. And maybe you yawn. And you take a deep breath. And you move around a little bit because it's nice to kind of regain the feeling of the body again. And once your body becomes yours, you know it because you feel it. And as you stir around and move your fingers and your hands and move your head again, just open your eyes when you feel like it's time within the next 30 seconds of real clock time and come all the way back. Okay. How was that? That fun? Well, I'll tell you, I have not felt in this good a form for this kind of stuff in some time. And John and I were talking about that last night. For whatever reason, it's just pouring out of me. So I was excited to get this stuff written up for today and give you additional patterns that you can use to gain facility with suggestions. So let's talk about, first of all, what you learned in the first half of the course, and let's see if there's any questions. So I asked you last time to go out and do some inductions on other people. I'm sure all of you did them. And so having done that, why don't we recount some of them, if you've done any at all, actually, and just tell me how it worked. What happened when you worked with someone who maybe had never, been hypnotized before? Hopefully you did that. I hope. And what happened? Did it work? What did they say about it? So who wants to start? Randall, did you do it? I'm sure you did. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to talk, and Lord knows what a problem that'd be. Okay, so go ahead.
Well, the day after, I had 3 friends come over. One I've done a lot of transport with, and the other 2 I've never done any transport with. One of them's been quite skeptical of it, and rather than saying it was hypnosis, I just started talking and doing representational system overlap with a 3-2-1 pattern and pacing and leading, and they
conk.
Yeah, they're right raving about it.
Dr. Milton Erickson, whose basic whole patterns we're studying here, had a secretary once that had a lot of pain. And so one day she was just sitting with extreme head pain, apparently. And he said, Mary, would you please come to my office? I want you to take some dictation. She goes, oh, my head is just killing me. I know this is an emergency. Please just come on in. It's going to sound a little different, but that's okay. Please take it down exactly as I transcribe it, or as I tell it to you. And she said, all right. And he started in talking about things like, this is a referral from a client that I've been working with. This client has learned to stop pain now. And he goes on and on with indirect suggestions, all levered into this letter. And by the time she got done with the letter, she said, for some reason, I just feel a whole lot better. I don't quite know why. He said, well, good, just bring me the letter and put it on my desk. So about a month later, she comes up to him and she said, I'm in really bad pain again. And do you have any more, dictation that you'd like to? For some reason, it really helps. So we want to learn to be indirect. And this is an example that Randall's talking about an indirect, permissive approach. Who can define indirect and permissive? What does that mean? Besides you, Randall. Yeah.
The person knows you're going to do something, but they don't know exactly what you're going to do.
Not necessarily. If it's indirect, they may not even know that you're doing something.
But they're agreeing to cooperate with whatever.
Maybe not.
No. Well, how's permissive?
Okay, good. That's what I was waiting. Who can tell me about permissive? What does it mean?
You allow them to experience whatever they experience.
Who did I say not to talk? Okay. Disregarding that, even though it's right, someone else tell me about that. Tell me about it. What does it mean? Permissive.
It means opening the language for whatever possibilities they unconsciously are guided to.
Okay. Right, good. John, you tell me. What does it mean to you?
It means that they're willing to let you do anything you want.
Okay. It's a common misconception when it comes to hypnosis. Erickson meant by indirect and permissive that he would give suggestions that were not in the form of an order. So what's called direct authoritarian hypnotists, and that's everyone out there, basically, they go to these long schools, and what they put in there to even last a weekend is still totally beyond me, even though I went through them years and years ago. Remember last week, last training, didn't I give you the overview for how to do direct authoritarian hypnosis? Okay. You just order people around. Sit down. Close your eyes. Become still. Now go into a trance. I'm going to count backwards from 10 to 1, and the time I get to 1, you're going to be there. I was wondering what would happen if they didn't. But in any event, that's authoritarian hypnosis. And who would it work on? Sheep? I didn't even follow up. Aren't you glad? Where would direct authoritarian hypnosis work? What kind of people? Think about it. I haven't really told you, I don't think, but think about it. See if you can tell me. Randall, do you know this one?
Timid.
Either highly suggestible.
Well, no, not really. Because suggestibility can remain constant whether they'll go into it by direct order or you need to be missing.
How about if they're extremely dissociated?
Come on.
Would someone with an external source be more inclined to this concept?
Okay, external source would definitely be easier to be directed authoritarian with, yes. I'm a hypnotist, you're the client, right? Sit down and go into a trance. I said you do it, and all the other clients I said you can do it, so do it. Okay, who else? How about people that have been conditioned to accept orders? Who would those people be? Yes. Military. Military people are great. You get a military person, you go, "Sir, would you please sit down?" They go, boom. I don't want to tell them, but if you want to just put the icing on the cake, you say, close your eyes and go into a trance. That's it. Boom. They're gone. They were so strongly conditioned. In fact, any of you here been in the military? Soldier. When you hear that even, what do you...
I was a little rebellious. In fact, they almost put me in stuff.
You hear this, huh? It's like when you're saying the ki to a trained martial artist means, come on. Yeah. To anyone else, it means, I'm getting attacked. Okay, so direct authoritarian hypnosis is what we want to avoid by and large. Okay? Now, you can do it anytime you want to by just starting to give direct suggestions. My suggestion to you is you start off indirect, you use the utilization type language patterns to induce the depth of trance you're looking to do, and by the way, that's sort of misleading, and I'll talk about that in a second. When you get them, quote, down there, okay, or into that different level, then it's okay to go ahead and use a few direct suggestions. You hear me do it. Okay? When they get down there, I'll start saying things like, now, get on with it. You know how. Bring those resources to bear. All of them. Yeah, now, do it. Okay? But then I quickly switch back out of it and into the indirect permissive approach, and I terminate the trance. Okay. It's fine to do it that way. It's not fine to order all the way through, or even necessarily not to use any of them at all. If, for example, you don't use any direct suggestions, the person may be left with sort of a confused feeling. John, you've had hypnosis sessions done by Ericksonian trained people, and without naming any names, because you've had some from the finest that I'm aware of too, like I have. And that woman is very good, Carol, hi. But you've had from others too? Okay, have you ever had a trance where they didn't use any direct suggestions and you left kind of going, boy, something sure happened, but I know what it is.
Right.
It's sort of a funny feeling, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So I've found personally that it's like if you have clients leaving and they feel funny, they feel like they think to themselves, I know something happened, but I don't know what. And I don't know if it's worth the money I just paid, but I guess it is. I don't know. I mean, that's literally how you'll get people feeling if you're so indirect that you don't guide them somewhere. Okay. Rationalize through this process with me. Assuming a person is conscious or a group of people are conscious when you start, what part is objecting to direct authoritarian instructions? Consciousness, right? Well, I'm going to get a muzzle. And consciousness then is the part that we're having to worry about. In other words, the part we're having to disarm or get around in order to get them where? In a trance, into the unconscious, into a state where they're more suggestible, right? Okay? So the whole principle we could sum up by saying what we have to do is disrupt their habitual frame of reference. That's the technical way of saying it. We're disrupting their habitual frame of reference. In other words, if I know that you traditionally will make a reference to the world as, okay, I am less than 30 seconds from my car, I probably had a shower this morning, I'm wearing clothes that are familiar. You know, if there's any of these kinds of referencing going on, and I knew it, I could instantly put you in a trance by just going against those things, provided that you're willing to go along with me. For example, I could say, sometimes you think you're only 30 seconds from your car, and you realize later that you were minutes, maybe 5, maybe 10. And those clothes that you have on, you thought those were familiar too, didn't you? Whose are they? Isn't it weird? You start to realize you don't even recognize them? Where'd you get them? And how come you don't smell like you used your normal soap? Okay? Now, how many of you are starting to alter even with that? Okay? As I disrupt the habitual frame of reference, I pull out the pegs that support consciousness. And remember, consciousness is very limited, 7 plus or minus 2 slots. Okay? It doesn't take much to disrupt it enough to get rid of it. So one of the big techniques you can use is pattern interruption. So really be conscious of pattern interruption whenever you're with someone. Let me make a quick aside here. I had a guy call me up. I don't think I've told you this story, but if I have, stop me. Guy called me up on the phone, and he sounded like this. This was, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that, maybe more. I had an office in Portland. I did clinical work. And a guy called up and he says, "Hi, Kenrick. My name's Dave. I understand you do hypnosis. Is that right?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I'd like to set a session with you to stop smoking." It's okay. That sounds good. He said, "What do you charge?" I don't remember what I charged, but I told him. And he said, "Okay, well, when's your first available appointment?" I I told him. And he said, okay, I'll see you then. Well, the day and hour come for his appointment, and all of a sudden I hear this loud noise, incredibly loud noise, like a car driving down the street with no muffler. And I look out the window, and here comes this Harley. And this thing is decked out to the max. I don't know what kind of tailpipes it used, but this thing was so loud it shook the windows in all the buildings. So this guy comes in on a Harley. He gets off. I'm looking at him. I'm going, he's going elsewhere. This is my guy. And he comes upstairs. He's got all of his leathers on, big full beard, enormous big guy. And he goes, hi, are you Kenrick? I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I said, yeah. And he goes, I'm Dave. Okay? So, come on in, Dave. Dave sits down, and I immediately know a few things. What do I know? He's a biker, right? So I asked him, you member of any organizations or groups? No, I just kind of hang out with some friends. You know, we all just kind of do things together. But it's sort of an organization, we play by the rules. He's kind of going on like this. Okay, what am I learning? Highly rule-oriented. He has a lot of structure in his life. Okay? Aha, I know something about this guy. He's a redneck, I'll bet. So I said, okay, great. You ready to stop smoking? Yeah. Do you mind if it happens fast? Or do you need it to be painful? No, I don't have to have it painful. Well, I just want to ask because I can make it happen really fast for you. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine, he says. All right. Sit in that chair, because that's where all changes take place. So he moves up and sits down. And I said, now, shut your eyes and go into a trance immediately, because you know how. He looks at me and goes, I don't think I know how. I go, that's because you're thinking. Stop it. And boom, out he goes. And I mean, just like, And I go, good, that's good enough. Now, here's what I want you to do. Imagine, if you will, that you're reaching for a cigarette. And you reach out your hand, and he takes his hand and he goes like this. This is just too funny. You reach out your hand, and you get hold of a cigarette. In fact, it's just a cigarette all by itself. Randall, I'm sorry. You'll just plug your ears on this part, okay? In any event, I said, as you reach out, it feels different somehow. That's okay. And you start to bring it towards you, and, well, I'll tell you if it just doesn't feel different. It's starting to feel heavy, like you're having to drag it. But okay, so it's like you're frustrated, though. It's damn frustrating. It's how come it's hard to get this cigarette to you? And he's like, face all wrinkled up, and he's trying. And I said, it's growing in size, too. The dang thing's getting bigger, and bigger still. And finally, you're getting really close now, and I'll be doggone, it hardly fits in your hand. And all of a sudden, you get conscious enough, and you look at it. It's a penis attached to a person who doesn't like bikers. And he goes, I said, not so fast. I said, the guy has momentum. He's still coming towards you, and you find your mouth starting to open. Involuntarily, you can't stop it. And he's screaming and spitting and he's going berserk on me, And I'm thinking, how far should I push this? And I said, I finally go, that's enough. I said, no, it's not. It's enough for now, but is it enough for the future? It's enough forever. I said, okay, that's good then. He disappears. It was like this. I said, now, go to the proper level where this feeling is translated into your entire future so that forever you are a non-smoker. And you nod when you've done that. And he sat there for about 5 minutes, and he goes, I said, okay, good. Come on back. He goes back, he says, I can't believe it. How did you know that I don't like people like that? I said, well, just kind of a lucky guess, I guess you could say. Hand me the money. And he did, and that was all there was to it. So what did I use there? Again, I apologize. This was years ago when we didn't have the perceptions that we do today, but in any event, what did I do? What was the technique? I broke his rules, okay, which is the equivalent of a pattern interruption. Okay, I pulled out from under him the stability factors that he had been maintaining in his life. Once they were gone, he was completely open to suggestion. And I say paired, in his way of thinking, something so negative that there's no way in the world he could continue that behavior. Okay? Keep in mind that pattern interruptions don't just work for altering trance or altering consciousness. They also work for installing suggestion. Another way to look at it is, if a person is having a problem of some sort, they've identified a particular problem, consider that they're already in a trance. You could call it their problem trance. So what you want to do is dehypnotize them from the problem trance and induce a solution trance. And just make sure it's there in. And we're going to cover that today, how to do that. How's that sound? Okay. How are we doing? Is this helpful?
Okay. Follow-up on this guy. Did you ever do any follow-up on
Yeah. I made him follow up on a bunch of people, and he didn't smoke for several years, and I stopped after that. I had a sex offender that I followed up on for several years and was fine, and I had several alcoholics. I was able to do what Bandler did. I was able to get them to go into a bar, order a drink 2 or 3 sips from it, put it down, and without remorse walk away from it. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. Without any 12-step program, which I'm totally opposed to by and large.
How do they work then?
I don't think they do.
Well, people stay sober on it.
Oh, why do people stay sober? That's a different question. Because they substitute one problem for another.
Oh, the problem is doing the 12-step.
Forever and ever.
Yeah.
Every day, as much time as you used to spend drinking.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what they do is they substitute God, which I think is a travesty to God. You know, it's like what they do is they take everybody and they make them some kind of believer, and then make you feel stupid for all the time in which you've been doing this problem, and then with these new beliefs and everything and continued support all the time ongoing, they'll stay sober. Also, they get them on antabuse sometimes, or whatever its equivalent is nowadays. People do stay sober, but do they feel good about it? That's the question. So, John, you and I have done some therapy. When we're done with it, how do you feel? Does the problem feel like it's still there? Okay. So the other thing is in the languaging of it. In the languaging of it, I'm a recovering alcoholic. Now, with all you know about the meta model, what's happening? How long will they be recovering?
Forever.
That's right, indefinitely. And they believe that this is like a disease. Well, we all know that's bunk, because diseases are things you get from viruses and germs floating through the air. I'm sorry, I don't know of any scientific studies that show an alcohol germ that flies through the air and hits some of us and not others. I can tell you this, if for whatever reason our planet never developed alcohol, we wouldn't have alcoholics. Right? So it's a behavioral problem, in my opinion. And as such, you can address it from a behavioral issue. But the minute you call something a disease, what you have to do is you have to step away from the behavioral model and say, oh, well, it has to be treated and treated medically. So that's my major objection to those types of programs. All 12-step programs have that as a fundamental flaw, I think.
And the other part of it that I don't like is the part where it says you have no power.
Oh, yeah.
There's no control over this particular problem.
See, from here on out, you folks have a lot of skill and knowledge about language and linguistics. When you hear words like that, man, red flags fly in your mind and alarm bells go off and cancel it, you know, however you do those kinds of things. Maybe you say cancel, and the old Silva method, or maybe you say wrong, you know, or whatever. But do something and don't let those things in because they're deadly. Now imagine if you've been going to a 12-step program for, say, 5 or 10 years. You've been said how many hundreds or thousands of times, I'm recovering. I have no power. I mean, what have you just done to your unconscious? I mean, that's pretty good hypnotic programming, I think. Especially if you have to get up in front of everyone all by yourself and say it. How many of you have talked in front of the public before? Is that an altered state for you? Unless you're an expert and you do it all the time. And even then it's altered. So, you know, even in front of a little group, it's altered. You know, I mean, I'm not the same here necessarily as I am at home. I'm pretty much, but I'm a little bit more keyed up, you know, I suppose. So it's definitely altered here versus, you know, someplace else. So imagine if you said a suggestion to yourself over and over and over. Okay. Now, we're talking about indirect suggestion. We're talking about permissive approach, which doesn't mean they give you permission. What does it mean? You don't order them around. You give suggestions that basically the only way to interpret them is, wow, what a great idea. I could do that if I wanted to. Hear the word could, what does that mean? It doesn't feel like they have to. But funny, those are the only choices that they end up getting. Whether you want to go into a trance now or just begin to, at whatever speed is comfortable, alter your consciousness. So that we can start to work on a problem together today, or we can address the issue directly that you came here for. Okay? These kinds of language patterns are indirect and permissive. And the net result of them is that people don't fight you. They just sit there and they go, oh, no, I could do that. Okay. Sure. And pretty soon, before they know it, half hour, 40 minutes has gone by. They've gone through a whole trance process. They don't remember a thing that's been said, basically, probably, and they've changed. Okay, that's the power of indirect and permissive suggestion patterns. Now, where else would you want to use an indirect approach? Where would be the obvious place to use an indirect permissive approach? Work. Where else? I'm talking about general category. Where else would you want to use an indirect and permissive approach? On hostile people, or on people that are likely objecting to you somehow. People that aren't going along with you. Erickson, as an example, would have clients come into him occasionally that would say, I'm not hypnotizable. I've had 5 therapists try to hypnotize me and nobody could do it. And Erickson would have him out like that. One example in particular, the client came in and said that, and Erickson, and he's pacing. He says, the reason I can't go into a trance is because I can't sit down, because I have problems. You know, and he's pacing back and forth in the office. And Erickson said, that's right, you have problems, and you've been referred to my office. And you're pacing back and forth telling me that you cannot go into a trance when I tell you. And as a result of this, you think you're going to pace and go through 6 therapists. And I want to tell you that that's okay with me. I want you to keep on pacing today. I want you to pace, continue that direction. Now I want you to stop and turn around. And I want you to go in that direction. Very good. And as you go in that direction, I want you to notice the clock. That's right. Now stop and turn around and go the other direction. Good. And I want you to notice the chair next to the one you're sitting in. Or next to the one notice the chair that you'll soon find yourself in, he said. And then, as you continue, I want you to notice how your speed begins to slow down. Thoughts can slow down. You notice the paperweight on my desk, the weight of problems in a person's life, the desire to just let go, stop and turn around and only make it to the chair and sit down. I go, shh. It changed. No more problems. One session like that. Boom. So that's a case where you use whatever is being presented from the client in order to make whatever you want happen. That's equivalent cause and effect pattern, sort of, that says, well, you may think you object, but in reality, you're just pointing to a deeper level of you that's in complete agreement. Okay? It's that similar kind of a pattern, a bind type pattern. But very elegant. Hi, George. Okay.
Okay, so how do you use that if you're talking to somebody and as you're giving suggestions, direct or indirect, going, no, I'm not.
I'm giving you so much information right now that you'll want to go back over and over this. And like you'll do a few sessions and then listen to it again and go, oh, I could have done this. And the answer to that question is you'll see it. And so we talk about sensory acuity in here, and we'll go over that here in just a second. But the idea is to discover if they're buying into your suggestions or not. And by the way, this is no difficult thing. I spent a long time thinking that people go into a trance and remain entirely immobile. Now, by and large, unless you tell me, I think I remain immobile when I go into a trance. Because that's what I thought people did when they go into a trance. So that's what my mind produced. Okay? Well, see, I don't do that when I work with clients. I do things like, and as you're going into a trance, you can just feel it increasing. And I wait for an answer. Some kind of an answer. They'll go like this usually, or they'll go, uh-huh. And if they go, uh-huh, I sometimes just say, and you know, the unconscious can just nod your head for yes. Can it? There you go. I win.
Kind of like this.
And by the way, that's what I just did with him. You can do in face-to-face settings. If there's some resistance, you can just go, and you can go ahead and just go along with this, can't you? And just wait. Stop and wait. And pretty quick, they'll have a tendency to go, yeah. Or if they object, at least you've got it right and you can deal with it and be done with it. Okay. What I do, though, is I establish, and by the way, I used to think this was really hard to do. It's called ideomotor signals. And I'll tell you why it was hard in a second. But I just establish this right up front. And it feels comfortable, doesn't it? That's right. And then I give feedback. I reinforce it. That's right. It does feel comfortable. In fact, it's not hard at all, is it? No, it's not. As they shake their head, no. Now I've got yes and no signals established, don't I? Now, as I'm going along, and you know it's interesting, how a person, Bill, can just go ahead and keep on signaling like that with every suggestion I give, aren't you? That's right. Okay, now, what have I just done? Now I know if they're accepting my suggestions. Okay? So I say, John, you can find yourself learning at such high speed, even you're shocked. But you know what? You might not believe that. And that's okay. Because, you know, it's important to deal with whatever is going on there before you believe it. Now, let's deal with that. So here's what I'd like you to do. First of all, the suggestion I've given is already finding its way down to that level, that appropriate place, where it circumvents any kind of interference and just lodges itself there permanently, as if any attempt to dislodge it would just make it deeper still. But anything else that disagrees with your learning would certainly not be in your best interest, would it? No, that's right. And so, knowing that, why not go ahead and just give yourself a suggestion that says, hey, I want to learn this. I want to learn it now, and I can do it. You know how to say that in your own mind, don't you? Yeah, good. So see, as he's nodding yes, I'm just going, yeah, good. No, it's not, or whatever I'm supposed to say. And I just give suggestions to get around it. So in the old days, ideomotor signals was set up like this, and it still is to this day, by the way, if you want to do it. Put someone's hands on their lap like this, and you say to them, and this used to be hard. This took me a long time to be able to do. You'd say, now that you're in a very deep trance, I'm going to ask you to give me a signal for yes. And sometimes they just do that and wait. And the poor person is like, in a trance, you know, it's like, I'm going to, in trance, everything is interpreted literally. I don't know if I've said that to you or not in the past. Everything is interpreted literally, straight ahead. I'm going to ask means I haven't asked. So if I haven't asked, you don't have to respond. So the person will sit there. And the hypnotist will wait. And pretty soon the person gets mad, you know, because they're like, nothing's happening. So they're like, what? You know, what? And then the hypnotist goes, well, give me a signal for yes. Well, okay. Now, what they would do oftentimes, though, is they go like this. I'm going to push a finger that you can just move for yes. And the person goes, and the hypnotist says, so now move that finger for yes. The person goes, now what's wrong with that response? Can you see that on camera? What's wrong with that response? It's conscious. How do I know it's conscious? Because it's fluid. Okay? The conscious mind enables fluidity like that. The unconscious mind doesn't do it that way. It does it like this. More like that. It'll jerk. Okay? So you say, good. Now that was a good signal, but it was conscious. And I'd like your unconscious to give me that signal now. And they'll do it different. And you go, good, there. Any difference at all they come up with, you reinforce. And then you get it for no. So now they're sitting there going like this the whole session. You're having to watch, you know. So sometimes people would have their hands on a chair like this, like a big comfortable chair if you have that in your office. Okay, and I was having to watch. My field of vision was too wide. And I'm giving suggestions trying to see which finger's moving. And especially my chair used to be over here. So I'd have to, you know, be looking around and see that hand. So finally I got good at just doing it on one hand. Okay, this is yes and this is no. Well, I could just do it on that hand, and that worked a lot better. But then I got to thinking, hey, wait a minute, what am I doing here? How many of you have learned something in the class so far? Just nod if you've learned something. Now, there's just two ideomotor signals right there. There's one, here's the other. Okay? How much did you have to think about either of those two signals to use them? They were largely unconscious. Okay? So I thought, hey, these are already set up in life. What am I trying to push the river for? So then I just go, your name is John, right? Good. And you knew how to answer that, and I'd like you just to keep that same signaling system as we go into a trance now. And you know how to shut your eyes to do that, don't you? Up they go. And then they just keep on go like this and they go like that throughout the whole time. And sometimes when they go really deep, it's like they'll slow down and they'll stop. And sometimes there's a long pause too. You'll say, and so is the change complete? And they just sit there, and pretty soon you'll say, signal, one way or the other. And they'll go, they're about that big. And you go, is that a twitch? Or is that a signal? And you go, signal bigger. If you just try to signal, do it again and do it bigger. Like this. And you go, okay, very good. Because otherwise, they just may be twitching. Have you noticed that people will really twitch in trance? They'll like really space out? Okay, long diversion to say that the indirect approach is where we're headed totally. That is the power in everything we're doing, is the ability to disarm consciousness, get past it into an open, receptive state of mind, and put there what you want to happen. I mean, that's a great summary, actually. Okay. Randall, we used up all your time. We're going to have to move on.
I have one question about it.
I'll bet you do.
I've noticed several times in sales call situations where I'll start with just simple rapport, sitting the way the person does, and then I'll start breathing at their pace. And then a minute or two later, I'll notice that I'm starting to go out. Can I assume that they are going to follow and go into trance?
Yeah, in fact...
So just take it to the level I want.
Yeah, I used to do that as a demonstration. And I can just sit someone right in front of me and just go into a trance myself, and pretty soon I go like this, and pretty soon they do too. It looks kind of flashy, but the problem is, since you didn't instruct them with words to get them there, they sometimes don't have words when they get there. So once their eyes go closed, like, come on back, and then they'll come back, but you try to talk to them once they're out. Now, I got around that by saying, now, once you go into a trance, you'll hear my voice and follow my suggestions. Like, learn to take the shortcut. That's just like eye closure. I told you I will not play the battle game of eye closure. Some hypnotists will try and try and try, and you'll find your eyelids are growing heavier and heavier and heavier. They want to close. Well, who immediately is not going to follow those suggestions? Mismatchers. They're going to go, no, they're not. Got helium balloons attached. I'm wide awake. Okay? Other people will just simply go, it's too easy to mismatch that. They'll go, they haven't gained any weight recently. Well, no, they're not heavier, really. And sometimes if the hypnotist is good, he'll say, just like when you're going to sleep at night, your eyes just want to close because you're tired. Well, okay, if they can represent that quickly enough in their own head, maybe it'll work. But generally, this eye closure battle thing will last like 15 minutes sometimes, or 10 minutes. And it's frustrating to the hypnotist, and it's frustrating to the client. So what's the way around it? Sit down and close your eyes. Now. And they sit down and close their eyes. If they don't do that, you probably don't have a clear relationship that you're going to be doing the work, and they're going to be receiving the results. So it's then, by definition, must be permissive, must be indirect, and must be covert. Because you're probably in business. Or with friends. You didn't say, I'm going to do trance with you now. Okay? So then even more all of this stuff will come into play. Okay. Did I answer your question or not? Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's move on.
I had a couple of opportunities to do it. One with someone...
Take them.
I took them, and one with someone at work, and then one with someone in my family. I would have liked to have done more. I found that a lot of the people that I'm around are really...
Well, let's not explain
skeptical.
what you'd like to have done. Just tell me what happened with the ones that did it.
It worked really well. And the stacking of all of the fragments and the language patterns that we learned were...
As he starts doing it now. And the stacking of the language patterns and fragments. The deepening of trance states in those that haven't done it before. Okay.
But I found it to be really essential to everything else that we kind of soften up to put to work in our business.
You make a good hypnotist.
It's great to be sitting back here and watching you go out when he's talking.
I'm sitting there going, no, come on, stop it. Just say something clear,
It's a very good way to utilize all of the patterns in a very, very test
It works well.
like situation.
It works like you done said.
It works well.
Yeah. Now, why is what I'm telling you, why am I referring to it as being so hypnotic? Anyone know? You know?
Well, he's using fragments and he's speaking in a rhythm.
Yes.
And he's also using presupposition words like all.
Yes.
He's being very vague.
Yeah, generalized,
Yeah.
global concepts.
Yes.
So you have to assign meaning to it. You know, it's like that's right, lack of referential index. You have to assign, yeah. And for whom?
Oh,
For when?
that's that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that's not easy. Okay, I mean, it's not easy. Your brain is fried right off the bat. I mean, it has to try to keep up, and it can't. So if you don't want people going into a trance, speak specifically. So do you ever find people
I do want people to go into a trance.
Do you ever find people on the
Most
phone
of the time.
when you ask them a question, they sit there for a minute and go, huh?
It's nice when they do that.
What I find on the phone is that I have to...
Do you or do you not?
When I find the phone in the morning, and before I get on the phone, quickly,
And later than when you get off. Go ahead.
I have to temper the hypnotic patterns with enthusiasm.
Good, because if you start to temper the
I have
hypnotic
to
patterns-
kind of like give them a wake-up call after
No,
I
you
get
give
done
yourself
talking
a...
to
Well, yeah,
them.
start by giving yourself one. Yeah, I mean, if what you're doing is working well, that's great. Just understand that you're like massively hypnotic in your language. And so as long as you understand that, most of the people you talk to are going to kind of go like this after a few words. Here's what I learned to do, okay? This would be a great idea for you guys. If you're being covert, use a few words like he's doing. When you see the person going like this, say something very specific and strong that needs to get some kind of an agreement. Like, do you understand? Or that makes sense, doesn't it? So I might say, if I wanted to do that to the group here, and I wanted to install a suggestion, I might say something like this. To conceptualize the process or processes that a person might go through that has had a specific amount of training in these types of patterns as they're being applied to hypnosis, one might assume that a person could learn and organize things rapidly in the way I'm showing you. Now, really, when you think about it, organization happens as soon as you learn, doesn't it? I mean, when you learn something, don't you feel more organized? Yeah? That true? Okay. Well, let me make sure that learning happens today. See? So what I do is if I kept on with that talk, it was already hitting a few of you. I wanted to make sure I was going to do it long enough to make sure you got the point. But you'll have people objecting. I mean, even in a formal public speech, you'll see people going like this and nodding off and pushing it. You know, it's like, whoa, why am I going to sleep? They think they're falling asleep like you're boring. Right? So you got to be careful with that. I've actually had people, before I learned to do this, people raise their hand and go, could we get to a point? You know, I mean, are you trying to make a point here today? Because if you are, I'd really like to know what it is. And then I got to go. I'm like, okay. Yeah, here's the point. Shut up or you'll get it. But you understand that if you're not careful, you'll raise alarm bells in people's mind by being too indirect. See, what I'm saying is, since you're doing yours in business, you may be going so far global and so indirect that they don't have a clue as to what you're really saying. Like I said, do you ever have a problem with people pausing after you ask them a question and then going, huh? And you start off by saying, I find that when I get on the phone, I have to, in essence, give well, what I do, it's like, oh my God. Those questions call for a yes or no. And so practice chunking up and chunking down. Practice both sides.
I think having a real clear outcome and keep coming back to that outcome.
Mhm.
Have someone on the other line, on the phone.
Yes.
Is the way to go.
That will make your language
You can
adjust automatically.
use the patterns, but then switch to the outcome, testing your patterns. Really.
Make sure the outcomes don't levitate.
Yeah, okay. I think so. I'm not sure what you said, but I think transfer. Let me talk.
Hypnotic patterns,
Yeah.
language patterns.
I got it.
and utilizing them
Oh man, forget it.
in a trance situation
Fragments.
helps incredibly to install the patterns to use in any way you see fit.
Yes. So can you say that in like just 4 or 5 words? Just like try it once.
English.
Well, before I try to tell you what I'm talking about,
Well, Lord knows I hope you know. So the way to say that is, using hypnosis, install suggestions quickly.
no, using hypnosis installs all of the patterns that we've learned
Are you arguing with me?
in our mind more
In
effectively.
your mind, I think that's appropriate. Wait a minute. Hypnosis does not have a definition like you're either doing it or
Right.
you're not.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is using hypnotic type patterns is the way to quickly install a suggestion in the mind of a listener. Okay?
Right.
Now, if you leave them there, you've disrupted them from their habitual frame of reference, and they're going to eventually, go, wait a minute, what's going on here? I feel funny.
When you're putting someone into a trance, you use every one of the presuppositions and the language patterns.
Every one?
Well, I do.
I believe
So
you.
what I'm saying here is that it's like a laboratory. Yeah, keep that cold air coming in. It's a laboratory
So to
in
speak.
which you
Metaphorically.
can then take these language patterns and use them more effectively outside of a hypnotic situation.
Okay. For those of you on the tape listening to this, that was a great induction, and now you all come back, and let's move on. Did you get us to do these? Oh, you weren't. Were you here?
Yeah.
You were here. Go ahead. Practice chunking down, my friend.
How specifically could I do
Yes.
that?
Oh, I see. That was a serious. Yeah, it is actually getting cold. I'm sorry, I was so far out, even those don't work. By the way, yeah. Actually, the way to say that is after it's already been done. Oh, thank you for picking up on my request in advance and doing what I was suggesting. I'm going ahead and doing what I suggested that I hadn't yet communicated. It's like
owning power. That is
yeah. Watch. Come up here. Come up here.
I made you do it.
Like a Tony
Right.
Robbins.
Watch this. This is a great one. I love this. I don't think I've even taught this in our regular class, but I usually do. Yeah. I'm going to show you an effective punch. Okay. Now, let's just say I'm a car salesman, and you're on the lot. Okay. And so that means you're going to buy. That means you're going to buy a car today. No. All right. So I say to you, we're in the showroom floor, and you just asked me to buy a car, and I'm going to say, great, let's go out here and I'll show it to you, and you just like walk in the other direction. Okay. So wait. First we're going to say, okay, well, Dennis, then come on out with me and let me show you where it is. Okay. Oh, okay. Walk this way. Good. Let's keep going. Great. Now go this way. Good. And you'll find it if you just keep going. Okay. Now we're going. Okay. Good. There it is. So whatever they do, you just tell them to do what they just did, and you take over then the control of their behavior. It also is a bit disconcerting. You can sit down, thanks. It's also a bit disconcerting for people that are highly power and like power oriented, like huge major presidents of corporations. Watch with that one a little bit. They may say, "Wait a minute, let's play like I'm the person that you're going to help, and you're going to help me, and you're going to do it my way. Now, if I want to walk this way, I'll walk it, and you ain't going to say nothing about it." Okay, so if you get that response, you just say, "Of course. I knew you were going to say that." Thank you for saying exactly what I was going to suggest.
I know you are, but what am I?
Huh?
I know you are, but what am I?
Right, yeah. Okay, so when you're getting any kind of resistance, once again, I want to show you the methods of overcoming resistance through using indirect approaches. I'm going to cover that all the time. Why? Because generally, people resist going into trance. Right? Think about it. If you put out a shingle tomorrow and said, "I'm a hypnotist," the first thing everyone's going to ask you when they come in to see you is, "Well, does hypnosis really work? And if it really works, how come you're not buffed up, thin, rich, married?" They'll pick the one thing in your life that you're not and ask you why you aren't that if hypnosis is all that good. Okay?
What do you say?
Yeah, well, that's tough. What do you say? One thing you say is, "Look, it's not like a magic pill. I mean, there are some limitations, although it can be like a magic pill. See, it depends on how you set up someone's mind when they first go into trance. If you set it up so that it's fertile and rich with possibilities and with resources, man, I mean, the person is going to get enormous value and change. If you set it up like, I'm going to order you to do what I want you to do, and you will make these changes whether you like it or not, oh man, you're hurting them for a long time to come, because they'll kind of have this funny feeling in the back of their mind that, it's like, hypnosis is, I don't know, maybe. Also, for things like stopping smoking, hypnotists will generally say things like, so from now on, you are a non-smoker, Bill. Smoker, Bill. From here on out, you'll find that you stop smoking. That presupposes you haven't. Next week, you'll find that you no longer smoke cigarettes. I mean, they're just embedding command after command to do the exact opposite of what they're trying to get you to do.
So what's the opposite of not smoking?
You are a non-smoker. You find yourself free of any past habits that used to trouble you. Now you find you take a deep breath of clean, fresh air. You find your pocket is empty. There's nothing in it anymore, except the chance to fill it full of something that's really desirable to you, like money, or success, or love, or happiness, or something else. You can talk like that. You can say, from this moment on, you are a non-smoker. As of right now, you make the commitment in your own mind. Do it with me. I am a non-smoker. I'm free of it. I used to smoke, and now I don't. So a month from now, you'll have been free of this for a whole month. Think of what that freedom will be like. Feel it. It's like a weight has been dropped and left way behind you.
And do you do the same trance?
Well,
Halfway. No.
if you're using the patterns, trance is happening by definition. So, I mean, Erickson, I think I told you last week, or last training, Erickson used to do things like, a person would say, I don't think hypnosis works for me. And Erickson says, that's fine. I understand. We'll do something else then. But we'll use hypnosis at the end just in case it would work for you, okay? And they go, well, okay. Now, as I talk, and you listen, and you feel the chair underneath your body, and those thoughts running through your mind, allowing you to relax, and out they go, wham! And he does all of his work, and he brings them back, and then he says, okay, well, now let's do the hypnosis, shall we? Go into a trance right now and stop smoking. Well, what do you think? Did it work? Well, I don't know. It didn't feel like it worked. Okay, well, I'll see you next week. We'll try again. Generally, they call up on the phone and say, oh, man, this is amazing. I mean, the hypnosis didn't work, but I must have figured a way to stop on my own, because I don't really feel like I need to do it anymore. I don't need to come back. Interesting, yeah.
Now, there are certain patterns, like smoking, losing weight, where there can easily be an occurrence where they will do it again. In other words, and you don't want to have a...
Overeating more so than smoking. Because smoking, it's like you don't have to smoke every day, okay? But you have to eat every day.
Right, so how do you deal with, like, making it so that if you install anything, if you smoke one cigarette, that doesn't mean you stop? Because some people, if they do it once, they figure, well, it didn't work, and then they go back on it.
It's like people who go on a diet, and if they go the slightest, one bite of food off of it, that's it. Boy, they go, I broke it, and they go binge. That's the $1 million question. If we could answer that question for sure in 100% of the people, 100% of the time, we could retire tomorrow with all the millions you could ever spend.
So when you do...
We don't know that answer totally.
So the smoking thing, you never say, so if for some reason you happen to smoke one cigarette, don't think you lost it. You never ever say any of that. You just hope for the 100% cure, and if they don't do it...
That's my tendency. See, listen how self-defeating it is to even say something like, if for any reason you needed a little booster session down the road, it's free. Come on back in. What are you telling them? It ain't going to work for long. You're going to need to come back again. Okay? So I go for the 100% cure. The problem is, let me tell you, by the way, why it's so hard to fix smoking and weight loss, any strong behavioral addictive type patterns. Here's why. A study was done out of the University of Hawaii, I believe, by a neurologist, I think, that found out that all human beings want to alter their consciousness. They're driven to alter their consciousness. A lot of them search for this kind of alteration through religion. For those of you that are religious, especially if it's a fundamental religion, there's a considerable amount of time sometimes spent on the floor, on your knees, with your eyes closed, with someone talking generally in a monotone, using big words, in funny kinds of languages, like, "We beseech thee, O our Father, to please assist us in whatever heavenly way you can move." You know, and they do this long, drawn-out, formal kind of speech. But what does it do to the whole audience listening? Conk. Okay? Which it has been said that prayer, in reality, is the addressing of the God self within by finally getting through to the unconscious. Now, I don't think that's the sole answer to it, but it makes some logical sense if you think about it. Since everyone wants to alter their consciousness, people have different choices. Okay? Now, people that are overweight, I know about this one, will tend to do it through eating. People that want to drink will do it through drinking, drugs through drugging, smoking through smoking. You know, whatever the case is, they'll do it. Now, here's the interesting thing to consider. They found that monkeys, given the option of having sex or doing heroin, would do heroin until they died. They wouldn't stop. Given the chance to do heroin or eat, they would do heroin until they died. So what he did is he ranked all these different kinds of behavior alteration type things into a rank and order. So that, for example, overeating and smoking, which are, I think smoking is actually even higher than overeating, it might be, are up there with heroin addiction. They're on the highest end of the scale. Okay, they're much harder to beat than almost anything else. That's why it's so hard. And here's why that is. You know a little bit about future pacing. We've talked a little bit about how to lock suggestions in over time. Well, every time a person eats that's overweight, it tastes good. There's positive reinforcement. It feels good. There's positive reinforcement. Okay? And so you learn to dissociate from the potential bad future consequences to the present good feeling. That's the problem with any addiction of any kind, whether it's substance or mental. Doesn't matter. Any addiction says you're locked into the present and you don't see the future consequences. Does that make sense? Now, if locking it in happens because it feels so good, it's so profoundly good. I mean, it just satisfies. Like, for example, you're a little kid and your parents yell at you and they were wrong. And so they make up for it by going, "Oh, come on, let's go get some ice cream and it'll all feel better," which is what my parents did. And so we go out and get ice cream. Well, you know, supposing this happens a couple of times a week, and then I see my dad and mom get in a big fight, and my dad eats a half gallon of ice cream. And it feels better because he goes to sleep, because he has a sugar high. He passes out. And my brain recorded, and I had to go about trying to change some of that. And fortunately, it's changing slowly but surely, but those are things that are hard because I have the option of eating these kinds of food anytime I want. And if I'm at the restaurant or I'm at some place I ordered anyway, it's just as easy to get them to bring a little extra something that may not be good for me. Same with cigarettes. People use a cigarette to speed up, to slow down, to have a pause and think, to relax. They do it after sex, after eating, before eating. They do it at every major significant place where a break is needed. Take cigarettes away from them, and they have a secondary gain that is not being met. The secondary gain in smoking often is, I need a break. And smoking is a sociologically accepted way of taking that break. It takes me a second to get the cigarette out, tap it down, get it in my mouth, find the lighter, light it, inhale, exhale, and then address you. So it gave me that moment break. And that's why those particular behaviors are so hard to change. And it takes often luck, finding some major leverage, some major criteria, belief, or value that you just have. Like in the case of the biker, I set up such a horrendous consequence in his mind. Oh, and then I told him, by the way, if he ever smoked again, he'd just turn gay. I said, that's just the consequence you'll have to have, and hypnosis works, you know the power of it, and that's the suggestion I put in. You can't take it out. And so, good luck.
I smoked.
Huh?
I smoked.
Oh. So, but anyway, But the idea is that using these kinds of language and things, you can get a massive kind of result, but you still have limitations. See, I mean, there's limitations to things like that. Remember that always there's two major limitations, right? There's the limitation of knowledge of what's being done to them, as in they've had this kind of training, which isn't very often, especially at this level. Or two, they have a dead set outcome against you and they will not even hypothesize your way. Either way will defeat this.
Okay. Back to smoking, like a lot of people claim they really, really want to stop. They just can't.
Well,
How do you...
I'm not convinced about that because smoking is not a necessity like eating. Okay? I mean, you have to eat every day. So it's easy to have to eat, and so you finally get hungry and you're not home and you go to a restaurant and by golly they put oil in their food. And so this day you have 10 times the fat in your diet that you need, you know?
Do you have a set program that you use for smoking and those kind of
Yeah, I do have like a 3-session thing I do for smokers.
I think we just heard it.
Kenrick?
No, you haven't, yeah.
Excuse me for being late. And
That's fine. I'm glad you're here.
At this point, but what about the nicotine that comes into the system of people who smoke, and if it's, it's just hypnosis is done, but nothing is done about the physiological
Well, first,
consequences
first, if you just stop cold turkey, what will happen is there's no more nicotine coating the nerve endings. It'll go away because you're not putting it back in all the time. So the nerve endings are raw. It's like like these little fibers that are used to being coated and now they're not, and they start screaming at each other. And so you get smokers who start screaming at everybody else when they can't get a cigarette. I went out with a girl, I guess a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, something like that smoked maybe 2 packs a day, 3 packs a day. You can well imagine that didn't last long, but because she refused to try to change it. But it got so bad. I mean, she would buy cartons, plural, every time she would buy them. And if she'd get down to within about 4 or 5 packs in a carton, she would have a panic attack. I mean, a panic attack. Whatever we were doing, we had to stop, go to the store, get the particular brand she smoked, and they weren't easy to find. And if that store didn't have it, we had to go to the next and to the next until we found it. No matter how far out of the way it was, or no matter that we would have been driving right by there later or tomorrow morning, it didn't matter. It had to be dealt with then, or else she just couldn't take it.
Well, I've read it's the most physical addiction
I think that's what I was saying that right before you came in. It's up there with heroin.
Yeah, right.
It's like it and heroin are about on the same level, and overeating is also right up there. It's very difficult to deal with. Doesn't mean that you can't. It means you need to look for leverage. You have to really look for leverage on those issues. Okay, why do they want to stop? And if they really wanted to stop that bad, then why haven't they already stopped?
And I also think it supports the body.
Yeah. Traditionally, I make sure they have a lot of B and C because those are depleted in smoking.
And what's that other one?
Chromium.
Chromium.
Yeah. And that helps too. That helps a lot. In the therapeutic training that I do, maybe I'll give out that whole 3-course thing. That'd be good business, actually. You know what? You could actually just go out and do stop smoking cures.
Oh, yeah.
Be careful with your guarantee on it. You'll eat it a few times. And the more you do it, the better you get. And to this day, I do not like doing it. I mean, someone basically has to convince me that they're ready. And the way they do that is they say, hey, I'd like to come in and stop smoking. Okay, it's 3 sessions and $750. Holy smokes! It's a fourth of that anywhere else in town. Okay, go. Well, but I heard you were really good at this. I am. Well, what do you charge so much for it? I don't like doing it. All right, I'll pay your fee. Not good enough. Why do you want to stop? Well, it's just time. Wife and I had talked about it, and she doesn't like it. And oh, really? So who are you stopping for? You or her? Well, both of us. Call me when you're ready.
Yeah.
Don't want to deal with you. Don't want to see you.
That's great.
They'll go, wait a minute, I really want to stop. How do I know? If you wanted to stop so bad, why haven't you done it already? What are you looking for? What do you expect me to do for you? I mean, it's like, give you a magic pill or what? I mean, what do you want me to do? Well, use hypnosis. Okay, what's your belief about hypnosis? Oh, well, if you can actually get into a trance, you can change these kinds of things. Oh, really? And how long do they stay changed? Permanently, or do they go back? Well, if it's really a good hypnotist, they'll change permanently. Oh, really? And how would you know if you're in a trance? Well, you don't remember everything sometimes. Ah. Okay, so if you go into a trance with me and you don't remember things, then you'll know that I can affect this change. See what I'm doing? I'm looking for leverage. Yeah, that's right. I'm looking for convincer. Okay, so then I bring him in, I put him into a trance, and I say all chunked up words. Just like he was doing. Okay? And what happens is they can't, how do you remember? Say more than 10 in a row and the person can't remember. So when you bring him back out and say, okay, now what did I say? The person goes, well, you talked about going to a trance, and you talked about learning, and you talked about having success in stopping smoking. See, I remember what he said. Oh, no. I've been talking for 15 minutes. I mean, what did I say? What have you not remembered consciously? Oh, you talked for 15 minutes? Yeah. Huh. So you haven't remembered all of it, have you? I guess not. Okay, well, based on that, I guess I can probably help you, can I? Yeah. This is in the books. This is in the NLP books, or the hypnosis NLP books. But I had an exact example of this. A guy comes in. He said, I want to do hypnosis. I said, fine, sit down. I start to talk, and he's looking at me kind of funny. He's looking at me. He says, wait a minute, you need one of those things that go round and round. I said, oh, how silly of me. Of course I do. And he goes, yeah, you can't do hypnosis just talking like that. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a hypno-disc. And I said, yeah, now with Bandler and Grinder in their book, the guy asked for a pendulum, you know. And I said, well, how silly of me. It just so happened I had one. And so I found it, and I said, now mine's not motorized, but you see, what they did with mine is mine was some of the last ones to be produced, and it's a professional model. And so what they did is they put the super fast induction spiral on it, okay? So all you have to do is take a look at it, and by the time it stops spinning, man, you'll be so far out you won't know where you are. Oh, that's for sure. And then you'll change immediately, right? Well, yeah, okay, are you ready? I don't want to start before you're ready. Are you comfortable? You know, all those, what are the presuppositions? They're going out, right? Okay, here you go. I spin. So don't ever argue. Again, I want to drill this into your head today. That's called utilization. And this whole day is about utilization. Using what the client tells you, shows you, gives you, in order to get them to do what they've asked you to do, or ask for help with, or for you to get your outcome, if the client doesn't have an outcome. Utilization is the biggest, single, most powerful concept in all of NLP and all of hypnosis. It's not arguing. You notice that when I get an objection, generally speaking in class, I do not argue with it? You notice that? I generally agree with it. Well, of course you feel that way. That's because you haven't had a chance to hear a few more things that I'm going to tell you right now. And if I just heard what that guy said, well, I'd be feeling that same way. Now, what I want to tell you, however, that'll completely change that is, see, that's utilization.
Is that what that's right?
Huh? Yeah, that's right. It's a form of utilization. Yeah. In other words, I'm saying that whatever just happened is the right thing to happen. And that also presupposes what?
That you know what it is.
And that it's progressing towards the outcome that I said you're going to get. That's right. Okay, let's do some quick examples now, because I want to teach the rest of this right specifically, or procedurally. So, any more specific examples?
I was able to use the phone technique of talking to an employee while talking on the phone.
Yes.
Type of thing to get them to
That's hot, isn't it?
get up and leave my office.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Do they have any idea why they left?
No.
Good job.
So I get to use that all the time. Seems like
Oh, you got to get that same person to leave all the time?
Yeah.
Well, then suggest next time that anytime they come into the office that it starts to feel horribly uncomfortable for some strange reason after about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah. You can link a past success, okay, to any ongoing similarities. So you do it once and it works, and then they come in again and say, you know, last time you were here, you found that you had to go after I started talking. Have you noticed that that same thing is happening now, just having walked through the door and having clock time pass the 30 seconds? No, not yet, huh? And then just shut up and watch. You'll find, basically, they won't be able to stay in there probably but more than about 30 seconds. It's really interesting. Any other comment?
No.
Okay.
I sort of unofficially was able to take some people to where they're starting to go into a trance, and then I ran out of things to say.
Typical problem, especially if that's all I trained you to do last time, basically, is to go into trance and stay
So
there.
we stopped.
So it's like, okay, so now you're in a really nice trance, and hell, I don't know what else to say. So come back. Okay, good. Well, that's okay. Today is this whole day. Everything I've been telling you so far is all about that. So, okay, Bill.
Well, I think I told you about the one I did with my wife, and I was trying to establish a real positive state for her. She's a big theatrical dancer.
Right.
I really loved that. And when I started to mention how remember how that felt? Tears started coming. I think that just blew me. And but I can't remember specifically. I told you specifically how I tried to recover and that was okay. And I took a moment trying to figure, okay, what do I do now? But it worked out. And then afterwards, she told me, no, just she really enjoyed that. But really,
to give a little of additional substance to that without violating what was going on there. Bill was working with a person who, in the middle of trance, he'd asked to go back and find a positive resource, okay, which was dancing in a professional dance company. And she was no longer dancing with this company, and she missed it really bad. And so all of a sudden, when he reminded her of this, she burst into tears in the middle of, in a deep trance. She starts crying. Now, lesser hypnotists would have been distraught over that and freaked out, thinking they're hurting the client. The one thing I want you to get through your heads, the brain is supple and pliable, and you have to be far more skilled than what you are right now in order to hurt someone. Basically, it's very difficult to hurt someone. The brain has a lot of protection mechanisms built in, and basically will pretty much go along in the way it's been going on. Now, yes, you can definitely influence and persuade using a lot of the techniques, and you can hurt people if that's what you want to do. But I'm telling you, it's not very easy. It's easier to help someone, actually, and get some goal that they agree to than it is to install something just out of the clear blue. That's why, for example, until you really know how, installing phobias is not that easy. And you'll hear people that have had a little bit of NLP training run around going, if they get pissed at you, go, hey, you want a phobia? It's like, yeah, right, try it. Let me watch. I'll be real impressed if you can do it. Because it's hard, because the person doesn't want a phobia. So it goes contrary to their basic direction in the world. If you're violating an outcome, it isn't going to work. Okay, so what he did is he was able to confirm that the tears were okay. Yes, let it go. Let all that emotion out. That's the right thing. Something similar. And then he was able to use it as a resource and just keep right on going. By the way, what could have happened if he needed to at that point to get enough information to know what to do? How could he have gotten information right then from who he was working with? Yes. It's a wonderful tool. And remember that it works in hypnosis too.
That's actually what I did.
Okay, good. Yeah,
and I said, just calmly, where the tears from?
Yeah. Tell me what's behind those tears. Yeah. And the person will. They'll start talking. And then you know exactly what to do from there. Great. That's a great example. John, you were here, so.
I use this kind of stuff with dances, a lot of pain or relaxation or alignment kinds of things, just using images and breath, really, a lot of breath kinesthetic.
Make sure that when you're using images that you're putting them in locations that are empowering. Don't just have them imagine something. Would somebody write down for me to talk about the difference between associated and disassociated when you're making changes with people? Because that's going to be applicable to this, and I want to cover it here after a bit, but not now.
Yeah, I've done about a dozen trances since
Yes.
Saturday. It's been a lot of fun. One of the things that I'm doing with my business now is we're having meetings once a week where we come together and spend some time talking about challenges that we've encountered during the week, obstacles, and then that's the first half. In the second half, I do a trance induction for the whole group and go through and while they're under hypnosis, clear the way so that those things don't come up again the next week.
Wow. Well, boy, that's worth going up here and pray with me. Now, let me give you some just subtle cues here to help you. First of all, don't have the first half of any program be on dealing with problems. What you're dealing with really are opportunities to really advance.
Yeah.
And up until this point, they haven't recognized it as an opportunity, but now they do. So,
Gotcha.
The first half of the meeting is opportunity creating. And that really makes a difference, though. I mean, you'll see a big difference in the audience if there's very many people. Second of all, presuppose that the changes you're making will last much longer than a week.
Oh, right.
But your words were so they won't come back next week.
Yeah, I get a little bit nervous, I guess, while answering the question.
Oh, that's okay.
What I'm doing, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. Imagine that this is solved for all time. Imagine that should a situation arise where you would have responded the old way, you now have all the resources you need every time to respond this new way. Check it out. Go a few times into the future and see.
I do the future pace every time at the end, so the change is
Right. Good. Okay, great. John?
I had really, everything that I've done with this has been on the job training.
Quite successfully, too.
Oh,
So.
it's unbelievable. I mean, nobody can resist me. It's I mean, even the people who are mismatchers don't even have to agree with that. But the thing that I've found is that people will absolutely tell me that they don't want to do something, and I agree with them, and the next thing that they know, they've already said that that's what they want me to do before I even leave there. I have a mismatcher girlfriend, and she looked up at me the other day, and I don't know what I said, but she was shocked. She actually just smiled at me. We've been having a little problem. And she says, "Are you using NLP on me?" I said, "No, I'm not using NLP on you. I promised you I wouldn't do that." And she was just happier than a lark.
No, I'm not using NLP on you.
What was your outcome?
Well, it was just to have more peace of mind and some freedom.
With her?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's worked. I mean,
what you might do is say, "I'm certainly not aware of anything that I might be using." That's really, really honest.
Okay.
And that also tends to...
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Because I'm not.
Yeah, you probably were not aware of a pattern, but once you learn this stuff, you can't help but use it unless you try hard not to. John pointed out the other day that I had a conversation with him, and I said, "John, I'm not going to use any kind of influence patterns on you. I'm going to just talk to you from my heart." And I had a conversation with him, and he recorded the conversation and went back and listened to it afterwards, and doing my best not to use patterns. Apparently there were commands coming out left and right and all kinds of stuff. Of course, he probably just hallucinated that. But the reason that would happen is because at a deeper level than he could ever go is a suggestion that I'm irresistible, John. And then the next level up is like the computer and then the operating system. I'm the computer. Or not.
It's really exciting.
Yeah, it's really, really fun.
And I have a lot of integrity when I use it.
Oh, absolutely.
When I first came here, in fact, I'm one of the testimonials that had come here with the idea of not using it with not having integrity. I don't know if
yeah, you made that's true. In fact, I haven't even addressed that, but there's been a night and day change. When John first came, he openly admitted he didn't care if it hurt people. He didn't care what it was going to take. He was going to use these skills and get what he wanted in life finally. And so I thought, well, I can deal with that. We'll work on it. And so pretty quickly he started seeing the light and came around.
Yeah, amazing to me.
Excellent. Great. Okay, George, did you hypnotize anybody?
Yeah, I had a few examples, but mostly it was...
Do you have dates lined up now as a result?
Well, I have a story about that too to tell you.
I'll bet you do.
No. The child. Okay, we'll get to it.
Randall. He's still a child, so come on. Okay. No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't hear him, but... okay, so I used some of this on people my age, but I wasn't always able to keep the language patterns up and keep going.
That's that pattern thing that we're going to learn today.
Exactly, as soon as you start in the initial stage. But when I asked them how they feel about it later, they, starting with the, hands on the back and stuff, they tell how they immediately started to feel quite relaxed.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't use any of that. I remember how you taught us when one person sat on the other side and you said, what do you think we're going to do now? Okay, we're going to go into the trance. I didn't use any of that because I still don't feel, I feel that the easier one to start into was the one where they lean back and stuff.
Okay.
And so, but anyways, a girl that I was interested in a long time ago, I called her because she's highly imaginative and she seems like a really good trance subject. I called her up and asked her, if... Wait
a minute. Let me just interrupt. All people are good trance subjects. There's no such thing as a bad trance subject. There are only bad hypnotists. Take that as a presupposition, and you'll find your skill increasing by leaps and bounds. Everybody can do this. It's a matter of can you equal what they need in order to get them into a trance. Okay, go on.
And so appointment or something for a few days later, but I noticed, I talked with her on the phone for like 45 minutes. I noticed that myself starting to feel nervous again, like the way I did a couple years ago, the way I did when I liked her when I was around her. So I just called her back the next night and tell her that, I wouldn't be able to do this next week or on a certain date like we had planned. And that, and what I wanted to do then, so what I thought about doing that would make me feel comfortable if I were to, go into her house and do this, bring the girl that I like now.
You took a slap in the face.
Yeah, I'm not quite, with me to the...
Let me suggest a better option. Fix yourself.
But I felt so, I started to, regress these feelings of nervousness.
Okay, well, so we'll fix that today. I'll use you as an example and get rid of that. Okay? It's easier to change that in you than disrespect an old girlfriend by bringing someone with you. So it's like sort of invading old territory or something.
I know that she was never my girlfriend. It's just that I was the one who was so interested in her.
Okay.
And
well, we'll talk about it more. But so how did the hypnosis work? That's what I'm curious about.
Like I said, it worked.
It worked.
I mean, no.
You hypnotized yourself into going back and having fear.
No, as I was saying, with the other people.
I'm just giving you crap.
Yeah.
So tell me about one that worked real quick.
With my neighbor, even though it seemed like she wasn't too serious at first, she said how she started to feel feelings of, I took her back to when she was like 12 years old and doing something she really liked, playing soccer. And she said how, felt how some of those feelings came back. But at first she wasn't as serious going into it, and then I tried the thing, but I still don't feel as if I'm, as good as I could be at this.
I'm not either. I don't think one gets as good as they can be at this. To me, it's a constant, ongoing study.
Yeah.
The minute I say I have mastered it, stop learning from me. Because I will never have mastered. This is an ongoing process. And the neat thing about this field is there's so much you can keep studying, and so much you can keep adding, that fortunately I don't think I'll run out of subjects to study. So, great. Well, I'm glad you're recognizing the weakness in what you're doing, but more important to recognize the strength. Because you've made like a complete 180-degree turnaround from when you first started this class. So, and it's important to recognize that and to stay on that. That's the good part to me. Good job. All right, Rana?
I've, since the last time, I'm actually, this is interesting, there's a split that I have. I'm really good with clients, seeing therapy clients getting into trance. I don't have a problem. I'm real confident in that area. When it gets to, like I had a second interview yesterday and using hypnotic language in an interview, I don't know how appropriate that would be.
Inappropriate. And not hypnotic language is not is okay. That's okay to use.
Yeah, right. But in trance, right? Yeah.
That's where you get red flags and bells going off in their head. Yeah. And as you look at me and realize that I'm just like the employee you so much would like to duplicate all day long. I'd like you just to go ahead and drive that realization home by closing your eyes.
Great. Yeah.
At this point, they go, wait a minute, what's going on here? And they'll also be feeling very uncomfortable. Okay? So, no, bad idea. I mean, the purpose of this class is to support what you've learned so far by showing you when a person is altering so you can install some more suggestions. So you can see the ideomotor responses that let you know they're going along with you or they're not. Like in the job interview you went on for the college, and you told me that one lady said, yeah, I really like this. The other lady said, well, let me just at least see these last people.
Yes.
You knew at that point it was incongruent. The odds are you were not going to be hired.
Right.
Right. See? So what you needed to address that woman and change her, or alternately realize you're just not going to get the job.
Interesting. I think behind this, what I'm saying really is that what I need to do is take the confidence I have in the therapy situation and transfer it, because even in talking to people in other situations where they haven't come to see me and say, well, I've come to see, I'm your client, then I get de-skilled, and I don't use the hypnosis for, I de-skill myself at that point. I tell myself
Wait a minute.
Really? It's a process, I know this.
You were de-skilling yourself having realized that, now you're moving in the right direction. And let me tell you this, in all therapeutic endeavors any of you are ever involved in, about 90% of the work is finding out what to change. It takes about 10% of the effort of the whole session to actually do the change. I mean, doing the change is simple once you know right where to aim. The problem is if you don't know exactly what to aim at, if you haven't pinpointed it, then you're aiming at a big generalization, and the odds are you're not going to crack it very easy.
Sure.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Real quickly, what could he have said to the second woman in that interview that said that what we were using have to be seen as a client or other perspectives?
I'm sorry, I didn't...
Well, you said that he possibly could have lost the interview by what the second woman said.
Yeah. What he should have done there is said, okay, well, obviously, you're not totally convinced yet that I'm the right person to hire. Would you address to me what some of those problems were?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh.
Past tense, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's real simple, isn't it?
Well, now,
No,
geez.
I thought maybe you meant a long,
I mean, I congratulate you for coming up with that and realizing it's simple.
Yeah.
Because, at first of class, back when you first began, it would have, you'd have been going, oh yeah, well, let me tell you what they were. Yeah, you look like the right guy.
Well, let me just add just a quick thing then. To do
Everyone's
that,
wanting to knock me out today. I'm under attack.
to do that, okay, I know I'm really skilled in one situation. Associate into that situation, and then I can feel equally skilled.
Yes.
Okay.
What's anchoring and transferring anchors and resources? What does that do? You anchor one resource and make it available in a different context.
All right.
Collapsing anchors. Yeah. How'd you do with it, Barbara?
Okay, since our last weekend, what I have been doing is I don't follow hypnosis with my clients at all.
What do you call it?
Relaxation exercises, and then they're much more relaxed.
I don't want to do hypnosis. I've had a lot of, especially Christian clients will come and tell you this.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want you to use hypnosis with me. Okay, that's no problem. But you don't mind relaxing, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm relaxed. Okay. You don't mind making pictures in your mind while you do that? No. Oh, good. Close your eyes. Just let go. And I'd like you to start by making a picture of yourself being very relaxed and comfortable. Like some people would consider hypnosis, but you know to be just relaxation. They go...
And most everyone that comes to me can do stress reduction. So we talk about
Sure.
reducing our stress. And so what I've been doing is using the last 5 or 10 minutes as a summary time to what we've been talking about, and then we do this relaxation exercise, and then I bring in some embedded commands about what I want them to go away and have stay with them.
Okay.
And what their outcome is.
So hopefully you're using a lot of embedded commands and a lot of presuppositions.
As much as I can. I mean, I know I can use more,
Okay.
but I'm not using as many as I.
Tape one sometime for me and bring it to me.
Okay.
Get their permission
I
and
will.
bring it to
Yeah.
me. Good. Excellent. Well, you're using it.
Yeah.
And you didn't get a chance since the last class. Right. Okay. Now, since we began, I've followed a strange format. Last time and this time. Anybody identify it? Oh, I've done a good job. All right. The format has been one of being disjointed, like using sentence fragments. I'll address a whole issue and link it to the training that I want to do. And then go back and say, does that cover your point? Or I'll just go off on a tangent over to something altogether different. Okay, now why? Think back to what you've been going through this morning. How much of it do you remember? If you had to just sit and tell me right now, how much of it could you say? Probably not a whole lot. Probably right now, even as I ask the question, you're going, well, I'm sure I remember some things.
Yeah, right. That's what I know.
Yeah, you have to look at notes. What I've done is given you a really good example, in my humble opinion, of installing suggestions by using a dissociated approach where you're fragmenting everything you're doing. It all jumps in together at the unconscious level and makes sense and goes in the direction of the suggestions. But while it's happening, it's the equivalent of a profound altered state. So I wanted to give you yet another example of how this really works when it's done. And by the way, as I've been doing this, have I sounded like I'm doing a lot of hypnosis or anything?
No.
Like I'm pretty much just talking and training, right?
Yeah.
And yet, this is a form of dissociation used to present ideas and to increase the ability of you to learn and to use this material.
What's the distinction between what you've done and just kind of being structurally scattered?
Structurally scattered may not take into account, what do you call it, like a reference line all the way through, an outcome line all the way through that equals where you want. I've had a very strong outcome all the way through this morning.
So that's really been the structure?
Yes.
Okay.
I purposely set this up as a structure. And by the way I did that is I just decided I will teach in a disjointed fashion that will equal a dissociation approach. And then I'll do that. And that's all I had to do. And then I just trust that as soon as someone says something that will get me off on a tangent, I'll follow the tangent. Where normally in class, I don't necessarily follow it that far.
Yeah, you seem to take a long time between people.
Right.
Because I said my example, and you were like talking for 15 minutes. I'm like, I thought we were going to cover homework.
Right. So now, when I go to start actually going through the material, you'll see how much faster you understand it and we'll get it. Because we've already covered it.
That's great.
This is a covert example. I want to start really pointing this out because you all are supposed to be master practitioners, right? Okay. Any questions about what we've covered this morning?
So
John?
when you do this disjointed approach, you don't have to pull it all together at any point. You just...
No, because it all... Okay, what are we doing here? I'm teaching you how to do hypnosis. Everything I've said teaches you hypnosis. So my outcome is, how can I give you the most amount of information in the easiest to understand way that will be immediately applicable? And then how can I do it covertly as well and install it while I'm teaching it to you?
Okay, so now it's installed, and now there's...
Well, we hope it is, John.
At some point you have to bring it to the conscious mind. Just
Why?
Or
Why?
You don't have to.
You can bring it to the conscious mind. It's not necessary. Because, for example, are you conscious of the way you walk?
I'd rather be able to do this without having to think about
That's
it.
right. Before you started studying language, were you like very much aware of the exact words you were using and the structure they were in and all that kind of stuff? Or did you just talk?
Well, I'm thinking today's question is sort of like what I'm thinking about. There are people, and I'm one of them, who does 15 different things in a day. Now, some people who are really successful tend to do one thing, and it's a real kind of a line, and they get everything builds on that one thing. People who do a lot of different things, people don't perceive them as, there's a different energy, and if people...
Okay, the difference is those 15 things may not be connected. Your 15 things may be, a car loan over here and a business deal over there and a supplier over here and a friend over there, okay? They're not all connected. Everything I was doing today is connected right down the line. I just didn't follow a logical approach to the doing of it. I let myself wander.
About what?
As you wander inside yourself indefinitely. All right.
I noticed one thing about this particular way of doing it is that you don't notice how much time has gone by. I mean, there's a lot of time has gone by.
And time distortion is another major indicator of trance. Either it feels like a lot of time has gone by and it's only been a little bit, or it feels like no time has gone by and a lot has.
That's how it feels.
Right. Now, by the way, feel that feeling. You know what it's like? Now, for all of you, if you're feeling it now, where could you, Dennis, use this on a drive down to Medford? Or on any long, tedious, boring task to speed it up? So the task takes the same amount of time, but the perception is like, much easier to deal with. Yeah.
Well, with John's example...
By the way, making love, what would you want to do with that? Slow it down. Do it the opposite,
With John's example, what is for your definition of success be important as whether you're successful or not? I mean, I don't know, maybe Kenrick mentioned outcome, that's what he meant. But I mean, if making a lot of money is your definition of success, and you're doing it in 15 different directions, then you would be...
Well, I think what he's saying, though, is he's comparing himself to the success of people that are more successful than him. And he's saying, if you compare what they do in their day versus what he does in his day, and you compare what they make and what he makes, there's a big difference. And so how could he get more towards there and away from here? And I think that's, but ultimately, John, it is based upon, are you happy? Do you like what you're doing? Is 15 things good for you? If it is, then you're happy and you're successful and you're fine. If you want to make that kind of money, do you want to be single-issued and one point directed all the time and that kind of thing? If you do, go for it. All right, ready for a break?
Yep.
Okay, let's take a good 5 minutes, and I'll open the door again, and we'll get some air back in here.
Over there.
We're not allowed to get soda?
We on?
Convince me.
Are we on? Addressing the tape operator only. As you find yourself going deeper.
You don't want to do that.
Can I tell you what happened to me with Robert Allen? You heard of Robert Allen? Author of Nothing Down? I'm a master trainer for his organization as well, which meant I came in to train his trainers a little bit.
What did he write?
Nothing Down? The #1 biggest selling real estate book ever. Pattern interrupt. Anyway, I addressed one whole, he had this great big huge training where there were 1,000 people in the room or something like that. And so it came my turn to talk, and I'm up talking away, and it's like all of a sudden, I didn't tell a joke, and all of a sudden the audience would laugh.
Oh, you
You told me about that one?
the monitors.
Well, for those of you who didn't hear, just in a nutshell, the reason they were laughing is because the guy back on the computers would type up things like hypnotic language patterns that would flash on the monitors while I'm talking, or inducing hypnosis now, go deeper, that, and people would start cracking up. Well, this is all covert. They would have no way of knowing I was doing it, and so the laughter wasn't like a genuine laughter from a joke. It was like laughter like, what's wrong? Like, what are you doing to us? Is this hypnosis? And so it was damaging, really damaging. And I turned to I gave an exercise, and I went back to deal with the guy, and I said, stop it. Right now. Don't type another thing while I'm talking, okay? And I finally saw what he was doing. But that's what happens. For example, if the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and vice versa, that kind of thing will happen. And that's the equivalent effect of giving suggestions to people in hypnosis where you're not really aware of the linguistics. So, for example, from now on out, you will be a non-smoker, or you will stop smoking. Well, that's not too bad, but you will be. You'll find that you can't smoke cigarettes anymore. There you go. Hard to say it wrong. You can't smoke cigarettes anymore. Well, okay, you think you're saying one thing, but the reaction from the subject will be mixed. When you see that, if you don't have congruence, you don't have a done deal. If you don't have congruence, it's going to go backwards on you somehow. Always remember that. Congruence is how you know that you got the results you're looking for. People would ask me, and they'll ask you a lot, how will you know if the work you're doing with me today works? And by the way, that's a legitimate question, right? Is it possible to know using hypnosis? Sure. Sure. What do they want? Okay. What stops them from getting it? All right? So tell me about what stops you from getting it. They go, talk, and you go, you really feel that? And they go, yeah. Okay. Then after you're done, go, well, now tell me about that thing that stops you. Does it still stop you? Well, I don't know. I haven't gone out and tested it in the real world. Oh, really? But when you were sitting right here in that same spot at the beginning of the session, you also weren't out in the real world, and you knew for sure that it would stop you then. Now, what's different? Yeah? And they'll go, oh, well, yeah, it doesn't feel the same at all. And you go, right. So therefore, if it's not the same, it's what? Well, it's changed. Okay. So if you've changed, is that what you came here to get? Yeah. Okay, good. And if they press you and they go, well, I still have to test it in the real world, demand that the way they knew that they had a problem was they made a representation of it in their head. If they can't do it in the same way, the problem will not be the same. Now, they may not like where it's changed to. They may want to change it further. But get them to recognize that there has been a change and that it has worked according to what you've tried to do to help them. And that will help the work last longer. Okay, let's just cover a couple of quick things, and then I got an exercise for you, then we're going to go to lunch. Okay, let's go over page 1 of the handout I gave you today. Sentence fragments can be used to create very effective hypnotic pattern. A good hypnotist can seemingly speak nonstop for a period of time and continually address the presenting problem. This is called patter. That's like Joe was doing earlier. It's like yak, yak, yak in response to my question. It sounds like he's giving me a meaningful answer, but he's actually so chunked up and global that it's like, I'm fighting staying out of a trance. Okay? And that's called patter. All right? Sentence fragments are parts of sentences that, when strung together, create a powerful, permissive, suggestion-rich linguistic environment. Any incomplete sentence qualifies as a sentence fragment. By the way, you can mix complete sentences and incomplete sentences and string them all together as if they're supposed to be together, as if you're actually making sense. And the only sense you're making is you're installing suggestions. Okay, but you're not making formal sense. That's why I can't write anymore, as an example. All my writing is to influence. So if I take it back to college and give it to them, it's like full of red marks all over it. Every time I give it to Sandy, she comes back just corrected up one side and down the other. It's like, I just go, forget it. But it works. It convinces people. It does that. But it isn't technically correct anymore. That's because it's learning this kind of stuff. Okay. Such a shame. Okay. The best way to get good at developing patter is to go into a trance yourself as you induce the trance in your subjects. This, by the way, is also effective pacing and leading, yes? Idiomotor response. As you go into your trance, stay in uptime. That is, keep all your 5 senses oriented towards your subject. While in uptime, concentrate on your outcome and how your subject is accepting or rejecting your suggestions. Use your sensory acuity to note ongoing changes that indicate acceptance or rejection. You can even set up signaling methods to do this, called idiomotor signals. So you want to just let, as in don't try, but let your words pour out of your mouth, trusting your unconscious to follow your outcome. By this point in the training, you should be able to do that. This takes some practice, but it's learned rapidly. And you'll notice that it takes practice because you'll be like letting the words come and no words are there. You're like, now when that happens, prompt yourself with the word and. Okay? That's the one I like the most, but really the words and, as, while, during, since, okay, all will like prompt your mind to say something else. So like you get to a point, you're talking in the trance and you're saying, and you're really confident now that you can make these changes. And then your mind doesn't give you any more words. And you go, and, just say and all of a sudden more words will come. And that feels good. And make you feel even better. And I'm going to be silent now while you just feel how good that can be. But if you need to, it still sounds like you're making sense. See? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just, took your advice that when last week you said if the words stop coming, just say that you're going to pause and give them time to integrate. And then I would do that, and then I would find that suddenly right after I said that,
the words would come.
The words would come. And
that's why and is a trigger for that. Yeah.
What I do is I imagine what you would do. Seriously.
Well, now that's the most brilliant response.
Yeah, it really is.
You qualified for your certificate already.
I just imagine that you would keep on talking. So I then keep on talking.
What?
Brown knows it?
Oh, Brown knows. Yeah.
I'm reading Silver Mind Control book right now, and a lot of his inductions on self-hypnosis have the word will in it. You will. Now, how,
will is of the strongest level of those types of transitional type words. Will, must, have to.
But isn't will a future? And I guess that's okay.
Yeah, it's future tense. No, it's not okay.
Oh.
And you will stop smoking. The unconscious hears when. I don't know. Well, not now.
Well, that's what I always thought. How come Silva's so successful then? Do you know anything about the Silva?
I just on a real basic level. I don't know enough to answer. You know, don't you? How is the word will used? Will you come over for dinner?
I'm trying to think of what she's thinking of here. It's just they're telling you this is what you will do, and it's pretty much directive.
Well, I was going to say the first thing it is very controlling. It's very direct authoritarian.
The way that I learned and went through Silva wasn't the way that Silva teaches it. It's the way Jack Latourette teaches it, using Ericksonian hypnosis voice patterns.
Well, so then you got a lot better training probably than this.
While he's doing his tape, he's using the emphasis on the words the way that you're teaching, and when you hear Silva do it, like, yeah, we'll go into trance now. And, or, you know, you'll go to level, and it's irritating after hearing it the other way, to me.
Well, yeah, because it orders you around instead of smoothly guides you.
Right.
It's like a professional tour guide versus, you know, someone that just got in the business yesterday and doesn't know what they're doing.
But we did make it work.
Not that I would compare myself favorably towards someone like that.
No, I was laughing at the fact that Silva is Brazilian and
Next.
very, very authoritative. I mean, be very sure.
Okay, first of all, the unconscious is like a child. And it will respond to order if you can get there, if you can get into it. But in the meantime, people's ego and consciousness will block all attempts to get there because they don't like to be ordered around. If you can get there, you can tell the unconscious very simply, do what it takes to get this changed, and do it now. And the unconscious will go, okay, and it'll do it. That's why I'm telling you at the depth of trance, you know, and by the, what?
Oh,
What'd you say?
he's smelling my coffee over here.
He's got a spike with amaretto.
No, I don't.
Anyway, at the depth of trance, what we do is there you install direct suggestions because you've already overcome all the resistance you're having to overcome. Okay? Yeah.
The word will, isn't it very effective when you're going into the induction of the trance? As you begin to relax,
Only with a modifier.
You will become aware of...
Only with a modifier. As you begin to relax, I say you'll, but you will begin to find yourself entering a level of change in the next 3 minutes of clock time. Such that by the time that's over, you may not recognize that you're there consciously, but your unconscious will be working at far greater efficiency than you ever thought possible before. Now, how will you know that? And I don't know. Only you'll know. But I don't want you to know too quickly, because if you do, it saves some of the fun from later. Because you might just forget that I've said all this right now, but later remember it and have an incredible good feeling about all the work we've done together. Because you've got one more evidence that what we're doing today worked. Isn't that fun?
You only used will one time.
Yeah, and I modified it like mad. I would not use the word will for a suggestion, because the word will puts it into the future without a specified date. The unconscious hears when. It's like, or is the door open? The response in hypnosis for a subject is yes. Outside of hypnosis, with the ego and the conscious mind engaged, it's, oh, you want me to close it? Yeah, that's the way you can tell when someone's in a really, profound trance. Ask them a question like that. Is the door open? Uh-huh.
If you're using the adverbs, though, become aware, begin to realize...
You will naturally become aware as I continue speaking today.
Okay.
I'm still defining. As I continue speaking. If I stop speaking, they lose awareness by definition.
So you're saying that it's better
Notice how silent I am.
You're saying then that it's better to be in the present in the induction as you become aware.
I'm saying it's about the only way. Otherwise, you're not going to get much change. Like I could say, you will find you don't need to talk so much. And you will find that, that some of what you're saying is largely answered anyway. Now, what effect would that have? Just piss you off.
As you were becoming aware.
What happened? See, now, but watch. This is really good for you.
Yeah.
What just happened when I said that? When I said those words, unconsciously, it said it'll never happen. I just defeated myself. Consciously, you're like, I'll talk if I want to. Okay? Now, I know you wouldn't do that to me, but someone else you would. But by doing it this way, you may discover that a lot of what you're asking is probably already being answered, just as a result of being in this part of the training up through noon. See, there was the use of the word will in a conjunction form, you'll, but modified with a time date. Don't let that throw you right into trance as you absorb it. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay, let your words just pour out of your mouth, trusting your unconscious to follow your outcome. All right, next paragraph. The following can serve to get your creative juices flowing. Remember that sentence fragments are perfect for using all the 18 most powerful words, binds, commands, everything. Okay? So throw in the kitchen sink. I mean, just let loose with these things, okay? And for purposes of getting this on the video for you, we'll just read through them real quickly, and you may find yourself altering. And that growing realization, while another part of you really works to create this change now, the learnings that are taking place. Continue by letting your unconscious, and while you continue, while you go to that proper level, another part of you can take care of your comfort. This makes sense like anything else in your life that you totally have accepted. And the awareness that you've gained today during this relaxing yet profound process, as these suggestions find their mark, and the genuine desire to really change once and for all. So, remember to forget to remember. While your unconscious continues to create even more positive change, like this, and like magic, the stuff reality is made of, the ongoing commitment to change, is it easy, isn't it? And then, now, you'll discover, and you can really use it, a whole new way of thinking just opened up. Wondering whether your unconscious will carry out this change, or your conscious mind will. It's so easy, wasn't it? Just using the natural processes of your mind and creating changes like this, allowing yourself to just naturally, that's right. And the ways in which you'll surprisingly be using these learnings. So just let it happen. And when would now be a good time to obviously, naturally, convincingly now make this change? Find that these changes positively in your future. Boy, that's a really good fragment. You could even strike the word "that" if you wanted to in there, but it works either way. Enable a particular resource to surface, even though you think it wouldn't have been hard. So now's the time, and it has been done. Keep changing in your life just like this. What was? Are we out of tape? We're out? We're not like not. Those are the sentence fragments. See, it makes this a tape look good. So let's take lunch, and we'll be back. Let's take 1 hour. Can we do it in an hour? So be back at 10 minutes to 2, okay?